was it we were talking about, or the previous board was talking about going out for a bond?
2018-ish?
2018, just a few years ago. The previous commissioners were looking at doing how much of a bond? 200 million?
For the courthouse build.
The courthouse build, they were looking at trying to ask the taxpayers for $200 million to build a new courthouse. And it's something that, it's a need that was there. And now we're looking at using funds that we have essentially in the bank that were going to be used for a almost fruitless renovation to purchase like 2 city blocks almost. I'm looking at Josh because he's got a better handle.
7 acres.
7 acres of property and 5 buildings that would house all of Thurston County government that needs to be where it needs to be, admin, courthouse. Everybody's excited about this in the county. To go from looking down at asking for $200 million to now we're not having to ask for anything and we're able to meet all our needs. That's pretty incredible.
It was 280.
280
Pre-inflation without, factoring in financing costs. The project was a $280 million estimate back in 2019.
That's insane. So this is absolutely the government, the county being responsible with taxpayer funds. This is a rare opportunity in government. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I'll chime in here too. I'm pretty excited about this too. This is something that is an opportunity that, I'm just excited that you guys were able to get this done. It seems like, we've had an opportunity to tour and we've looked at all of the prices and, I think that you really look for a place that is going to put the people first and that all the buildings check the boxes. I worked on that campus. It is a beautiful space. It has enough room for all courts and services and room to grow, and the price tag makes sense. And so I think that this is a rare window and we'd be foolish to miss it.
Thank you.
I make a motion to authorize the county manager to sign into the purchase and sale agreement for real estate acquisition on behalf of Thurston County.
Second.
Motion and second to approve purchase and sale agreement as proposed, authorizing the county manager to execute the agreement. Discussion on that motion. Commissioner Mejia, you came off mute. Oh, you were just.
I was ready to vote.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for that vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 It's a unanimous vote. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. All right, next up is Opioid Abatement Council Interlocal Agreement.
Thank you so much. We're pleased to have Public Health and Social Services, we will remind the entire county, won the Most NACO Award.
Thank you.
Yeah, hand over to you, Jen.
Thank you. Jen Freihheit, Director of Public Health and Social Services. We are excited to bring to you today and have this discussion. Our Opioid Abatement Council has met 3 times so far. They are a very collaborative and cohesive group. They are in agreement with the ILA and the pieces within it that we're bringing forward to you today. Has been reviewed by the Prosecuting Attorney's Office and RISC as well. And so there's a couple pieces within the ILA that were added. So we started with the ILA that Robin Campbell had originally been working on. Added in the components that they requested regarding mirroring the model of the Regional Housing Council with the thumbs up, thumbs down piece, and then also added the request for if any of the municipalities would like to leave and take their money with them and not pool the money, that would be an appropriate piece that we included in there. And I have Katie to help go through some of the additional details.
Yeah, and if I could just add some context. So the opioids Abatement Council had the ILA in place, but then there was discussion among the jurisdictions about should the organizations pool the funds. I wasn't here at the time when that decision was made, but I do believe that former board gave direction for staff to explore that. And I want to thank Katie and Dr. Freihheit for the work they've done on two levels. One, getting the opioid abatement council up and going. And because I believe that the reason it wasn't meeting was there was a new ILA needed to enact, or at least bring forth the board's final consideration, a pooled resource approach. So thank you for getting it going. And then two, for following that board direction to bring you a concept today that has an ILA that pools the funds. And that really is now for this board consideration and deliberation on, is that the direction that you still want staff to go? And so with that, I think we're ready for the presentation.
Yeah, so the revised ILA, kind of off of what the director was saying, is a response to what the Opioid Abatement Council has been talking about for a majority of this year. The benefit of pooling funding really is because while Thurston County, the county receives a bulk of the opioid settlement funding, the jurisdictions receive smaller amounts, and they really don't have the expertise or the experience in opioid and overdose response the way that the county does. Since we've led the opioid response efforts for the entire county for multiple years now, we hold the opioid response plan through the Board of Health, and we really just have dedicated positions and a team who's able to work on this. When we look at the amounts that the jurisdictions are getting outside of Thurston County for City of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, the small amounts that they're getting, it really is going to take just paying for the administrative burden of administering those funds, whereas there is the benefit of making those funds stretch further if they're pooled with the larger county funds. The Opioid Abatement Council has really looked at the benefits of pooling, not only for that expertise, but getting kind of the most bang for the buck. And then also looking at, with the Opioid Abatement Council and the One Washington MOU, still being bound to a lot of kind of guardrails for the spending of the money regarding whether it's pooled or not. That's up to the board and the OAC, but there is still the One Washington MOU, which requires it to be spent within the allowable uses and within the 3 community identified priority areas for a bulk of the funding. Those community identified priority areas, just as a reminder, are expanded access to treatment, primarily medications for opioid use disorder, warm handoff programs, so you're looking at things like case management programs, intensive case management, and then also first responder based programs, so things like co-responder, post non-fatal overdose response programs, and programs of that sort. The Opioid Abatement Council has also emphasized that they would like all of the spending to align with the Thurston County Opioid Response Plan, just because that's been developed with public input and adopted by the Board of Health. There's multiple jurisdiction participation in the task force as well. So while there is a wide range of things that the funding can be spent on, pooled or not, there really is a more narrowed focus that's already been developed. So
Can I
with the,
stop you real quick?
yes.
Who is it that wants the you said aligned with our opioid plan?
Mhm.
That's coming from the state?
The OAC.
Oh, the council itself,
Yes.
okay, gotcha. Sorry, keep going.
And so the revised ILA today, the original ILA that was signed multiple years back before the creation of the OAC had specific language in it that outlined that the ILA does not constitute a shared budget and that there would be no pooling of funds. That didn't align with what the Opioid Abatement Council kind of came in assuming was going to happen. So the revised ILA draft includes language that there would be pooled funding and then also mirrors the structure of the Regional Housing Council. So it would allow the Opioid Abatement Council to make one funding package recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners with a yay or nay vote. If a nay vote on the full package, it would go back to the Opioid Abatement Council for revision and changes and then be represented to the Board of County Commissioners again for approval. It is have the mechanism of being routed through BOCC just because the county would hold the fiscal authority as well as the RFP process through public health. And then like was mentioned, there is also language in there about how any of the jurisdictions could remove their funding at any time in case they no longer wanted to pool funding. They would still be bound to the One Washington MOU requirements where they have to follow the allowable uses and the prioritized spending areas and the reporting requirements, but there wouldn't be a requirement for there to be that shared budget.
So our local OAC plan follows the One Washington plan. It builds from that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll comment. Great work on this. I reviewed the language. I think it's exactly what the council was looking for. I'm really excited that we're working together regionally, to put all of the money into kind of one pot, because it really means that we can put more money out for prevention, treatment, and recovery, and faster with less red tape, which will be great. And I really think the council's clicking, sharing ideas and really keeping focus on solutions. So I just want to again commend Katie, who is leading amazingly, and I'm really excited about this work. So good job. And that Thurston County gets to lead it.
I also want to emphasize, I know that the RHC has been kind of its own animal, but while it mirrors the RHC approval structure for funding, the OAC and the opioid settlement funding really operates differently than the funding that routes through the RHC. One, it comes with all of those kind of parameters already with the One Washington MOU, the opioid response plan, and the community identified priorities. It also is a significantly less amount of money than the RHC is dealing with as well. And then we're also going into it, whereas the jurisdictions have dealt kind of with housing for multiple years, the jurisdictions that are coming to the table for the OAC have little to no background in doing opioid and overdose response at all in comparison to the county.
Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you. Are we open for general discussion?
I think so. That was the end of the, yeah. Oh.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I have a lot of thoughts, but I guess I'll say, when this first came up and I was chair at the time, right, and we were having these discussions with the rest of the jurisdictions, and we were at the mayor's meeting, I pushed for us to do this together and, pull our money together and carry this format. At that time, we weren't facing kind of the budgetary shortcomings that we are now in. And so for me, I'm kind of wondering, as we're thinking about this ILA and pooling our funds together, I would want the county manager to have a conversation with public health, with Katie, with Jennifer, about what our needs are here first at the county level. We have just a lot, and where we can also use those funds here, here at the county, because we have a lot of programs that are at risk, and we have, the Department of Justice. And so I just want to be sure that we are ticking every box before we jump into an ILA. And so I would like to give direction to the county manager to have that initial assessment with public health to be sure that those opioid funds, although I know there's strings attached, there is, it's not ongoing funding, but whatever can cover the gap for certain periods of time, I would like for the county manager to have that conversation with public health.
Commissioner Fournier?
Thank you. I'm wrestling with the pooled approach. I think I understand the rationale, but I would want to pause before ceding, kind of any authority on decision making for any funds. Probably in the best of times, the pooled approach is preferred. But given some of the budget constraints that we're facing, giving away any decision-making power in these funds, I would want to really reflect on. Like it was mentioned by Commissioner Mejia, we've got the Department of Justice letter saying that we need to prop up or put online the methadone treatment process for our jail folks, and then there's no shortage of needs for programs that we have that we need to make sure are taken care of before we start looking at new things. So whether that's rethinking the pooled approach or removing language from the ILA like subsection 5D. I would want to talk about that, but I would also support Commissioner Mejia's suggestion that we provide direction to staff to have a huddle and look at our needs that we need to make sure are taken care of before we go any further. It is, you know, like the RHC situation was referenced, and I see some of the, you know, some parallels there where, you know, there's local needs that are still, we're still not sure if they're taken care of while we're looking at, you know, funding other organizations or other programs. So that would be my request.
I'll comment on this too. Well, I guess for me, I'm not so concerned. Of course, I'm always okay with anyone giving direction for us to see more things about funding. You know, I have painstakingly reviewed most of the behavioral health funding that, well, most all the behavioral funding paths that are coming in and out of Thurston County and the other jurisdictions, just for my own knowledge. And I just want to mention that while I have no objection to this, that, you know, treatment and recovery happens in City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, you know, all of these different places. And really what I think is exciting about the way that this is being proposed and the conversation we had at the Opioid Abatement Council, which is that there's already a plan in place that of what the people want for Thurston County, and that includes all the cities. And there's already a plan for the opioid settlement, or the other plan that the task force plan. And so direction is really kind of already set and underway. And so, you know, I think that I also feel that when we take a look at the amounts of funding, it's trickled funding. It's much smaller for some of those smaller jurisdictions compared to what we look at. And so I think that we'll find that, you know, doing it this way is going to be a good option. But yeah.
Commissioner Klaus.
Yeah, I have some questions. So if the board doesn't approve the ILA today, what are the impacts of that? I know with like RHC funds, for example, we'll see impacts where like if we don't approve something now, we have to wait 2 weeks and then providers are waiting. And are there any impacts like, is there a required timeline in the One Washington MOU?
So there's no requirement for when we spend the money. We've been receiving opioid settlement funding for a couple of years now. It's just essentially sitting, waiting for us. We've been needing to check kind of the legal requirements before we're allowed to spend it. We're not allowed to touch the opioid settlement funding until the Opioid Abatement Council started to meet. So we haven't even been eligible to spend the money until this year, since the Opioid Abatement Council just started spending. There is no guidance or requirement though, as far as you have to spend it during 1 year or you have to spend the funds received within a certain timeline. Essentially, it just sits until we're able to spend it. So we're not bound to something like a use it or lose it issue.
Okay, thank you. And then I also was wondering, do some of the new executive orders at the federal level impact the ability to spend within the already identified priority areas?
So as far as any of the executive orders that have come out, there hasn't been anything that shows that it'll impact opioid settlement funding. Opioid settlement funding is completely separate from any federal funding, and it is bound by the One Washington MOU at the federal level, but through federal court cases for the settlement agreements. So it's separate from federal funding that would be bound to executive order guidance, because while it is federal settlements that have been settled for opioid settlement funds, it isn't federal funding, it's settlement funding.
Okay, cool, thank you.
That doesn't mean that other things that we're funding now couldn't have money taken away that we.
Right, yeah.
Right.
I mean, for me, I like this pooled approach and, you know, it makes sense, but kind of following up on Commissioner Mejia's comment, I guess I am very concerned about, I mean, when you went through, like, I am concerned about, is there, like, I don't even know the magnitude of the dollars between what we need at our, the county runs the jail, and we're under pressure to provide a kind of treatment there that's opioid related. The first parameter you said is expanding treatment capability, so maybe that fits, I don't know. I don't know if it matches up and it would be a reasonable use. And I don't know if.
We can vet that through. I
mean, I'm curious to know more about that, how that fits, because Commissioner Mejia is correct that we're in a tight budget situation and we have these certain pressures, and to the extent that things fit, you have to sort of at least think about that and understand that before you make the decision to go a different direction.
The last scoping number that the sheriff's team provided was about $800,000 annually. And we're working with their fiscal team and our budget team to dial those numbers in, so we make sure we fully understand what that is. And we've also had a meeting with Joe Avalos and the Chief of Corrections to see, are there access to different types of funding? So we're exploring a few things, but this would allow us to take a minute, bring Katie and Dr. Freiheit up to speed on that settlement situation that we're working through to see what options are available, and then we can come back and report to the board.
It seems to me that if we did that kind of approach, it would be a stopgap, because this isn't $800,000 of ongoing funding in perpetuity, which is what we're going to need potentially to fix the problem at the jail in terms of the other legal. So it would be, you'd have to think about that, right?
Like this is trickled in over like how many years?
So yeah, so in regards to kind of the funding amount, so there's multiple different settlements. There are also, since the last work session, a couple new settlements, including the Purdue one, have been finalized. So the dollar amounts have changed a little bit. Okay. The settlements also all have different payout structures. So some of them pay out over 17 years. We're a couple years into that already. Some are 13, 10, 7, some are 2 payments, and some are 1 lump sum up front. So as far as ongoing funding, it does for Thurston County equate prior to the new settlements that have been finalized, because we don't have the numbers for those yet, but it is less than $1 million per year on an ongoing basis. So when we talk about something like, that's the full settlement amount.
Not ongoing basis, it's for a certain period of time.
Time limited.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, a lengthy period of time, but
I think it's worth looking into.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Mejia and then Commissioner Grant.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just want to add, I'm at the core, I'm still very supportive of pulling all of our funds together, right? We can do much more together than separate, but I just want to be sure that we're doing our due diligence and making sure that we're addressing our needs here at the county too, and being sure that even though, Katie has presented several times kind of the figures and kind of the timeline of that, every little bit kind of helps. And so I just want to be sure that the county manager and public health have those conversations and then come back to the board and say, yes, it's, there might be a possibility here, or actually not there, but over in this program, or not at all. And so that's kind of just what I want to happen before we approve moving forward with this ILA. And just being sure that we're, before we confirm and pulling all of our funds, that we're addressing our needs here at the county too.
Commissioner Grant and then Commissioner.
Yeah, and I'll comment a couple things. Based on my experience so far in the Opioid Abatement Council, I don't think we would have any pushback around providing services in the jail, since most all of the jurisdictions are dealing with the people who are in and out of the jail. So it's something that absolutely affects all of us. But I will mention that, my take on the recent housing thing that came down from Trump, that when as a person who was a behavioral health funder for, in charge of funding for Medicaid and behavioral health for 10 years, I read that as some real opportunity, because what that directive said was that, some things really negative, and then other things of people must be in treatment, people must have, access, they have to be getting treatment. So that means dollars are gonna have to come down with that directive. And so I've got some hope coming, around if you're gonna make a directive at the federal government. I have experience, back in 2020, that when a directive like that happened, that money came down the pike later, because you can't say one thing without following up with money.
Oh, yeah, they can.
That's just my opinion on it, but I also just want to mention too, I was just looking at this, that the breakdown is like just so you guys know, the breakdown, Thurston County gets about 2.3, I'm not even gonna say what, like 2.3 versus Lacey getting 0.2, Olympia getting 0.6, Tumwater getting 0.2. So it's like 80-20, and, when it comes to this funding split. And so just kind of mentioning that too. And it's, when we think about $100 million, that's 800, 200. So, yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Okay, so is there any,
Like,
oh yeah, sorry.
Even if we do look at our needs and say it's something like the jail for the methadone treatment, that's still a regional approach, and we could still approach it from a pooled perspective. I just, want to make sure we're not ceding away our ability to make sure that, the right decision is made from an organizational perspective. And, even if we don't take a pooled approach and we were to do this, and, there are folks in the jail, like Commissioner Grant said, that are from the different jurisdictions, they would probably be getting bills for the treatment if they weren't, they weren't to go into some type of pooled agreement to use that money for this. So, that conversation should be had with the different jurisdictions as well. That, this is not just our issue to solve, this is everyone's issue to solve.
So the conversation proposed by the county manager, as I heard it, aligned with kind of Commissioner Mejia's suggestion, and I didn't hear any pushback from that. So the idea would be hold this up temporarily for some additional conversation to occur.
Yep.
And just and see what dots can be connected, if any, that aren't already being connected. And then this would come back to the board in a couple weeks, or what is the?
I think we come back to the board.
Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're motivated to keep moving this forward. The team has done a lot of hard work, and we are already working with Jen's fiscal team and the budget team on all things public health funding. So we'll have that conversation and loop them into the conversation we're having with the sheriff on the settlement.
That was my attempt to sort of summarize this discussion. Any concern about that?
I'm just wondering, so
direction?
if we're gonna get numbers, I just would request that if we could get it broken down by what we're spending as a county on prevention, what we're spending on the county for treatment, and what we're spending on the county for in jail services, for that realm of things. And so just to be able to look at, kind of the different realms of things that get paid for across the county.
So public
And
health,
and revenue sources for those too,
Right,
please.
in each of those revenue sources, and that could be any revenue source, meaning that if it's going to the coming from us to the BHO, if it comes to Thurston County and leaves Thurston County and goes to the BHO for them to distribute, that would still be something that we should be looking at.
that'll take longer than 2 weeks for us to put together. So we're happy to put all that together, but it'll take longer than 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else on this topic? Thank you so much. This is good, and hopefully we'll get to a good point. Okay.
Thank you.
Sooner rather than later. Thank you. All right, next topic this morning is Public Works 2026-27 rate and fee adjustments.
Morning, Public Works.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Get settled here for a moment, just a sec this out.
Catching up?
Yes, Thank you.
Karen, can you just start by giving well, introduce you and your team, but then give a quick overview why this is coming to the
Yes,
board?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Karen Weiss, Public Works Director. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager to my left, you're right. Jeff Bickford, Solid Waste Manager, to my right here. So today we are bringing a discussion to you on proposed rate adjustments for the 26-27 budget cycle, budget biennium. This work session is a step in the budget development process, and it's a follow-up to an informational e-brief that was provided on July 2nd to the board. So with that, is that contextual?
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
very good. All right. So Public Works is proposing rate adjustments for the water and sewer utilities. For the water and sewer utilities, the stormwater utility, the solid waste utility, and the noxious weed program. Rates and fees provide the primary source of revenue for these utilities, essential services utilities and programs, and are needed to keep up with escalating operational costs, capital investment needed to maintain adequate levels of service and address our growing county. So first, we'll talk about our water and sewer utility rates together. So as a reminder of our water and sewer utilities, these are 24/7 operations, and they provide essential services for over 800 customers in 4 service areas: the Boston Harbor, Grand Mound, Tam-O-Shan service areas for water, and we add Olympic View for the sewer services. The proposed rate adjustments that you see before you are the next step in implementing our blended rate model, which was a key component of our utility consolidation efforts that we implemented in 2024, with the goal of achieving fully uniform rates in 2028. So this was in accordance with the model that was prepared at the time we were having our utility consolidation discussions. And just a reminder on that utility consolidation, that was intended to provide administrative and financial efficiencies, create financial rate stability for payers, and also financial solvency for the utilities themselves. They're very modest adjustments, and I do call them adjustments because for some of our utilities, they will actually see a decrease in their rates. You can see that, and I will refer you to, I think in your packets, you all have some rate sheets associated with this. You can just keep there. I'll probably refer to them periodically. But for example, Tam-O-Shan, which currently has our highest rates, to move towards that uniform rate in 2028 is actually going to be seeing a decrease in their rates. Just for always good to contextualize some of this, the Boston Harbor area, for example, will see about a $6.50 increase if you are a residential customer using about 700 cubic feet of water per month. So that just gives you an idea of what that is for a residential customer. Utility Advisory Committee was supportive of the rate consolidation implementation and is aware of the next step in this process. And in terms of outreach and stakeholder engagement on this, we will have these rates posted on the website. We'll be including these in billing flyers, which you see here. These flyers will go in our billings that go out each month to our customers. And we have an article that will go out in our quarterly newsletter. So I'll pause and ask if there are any questions on water and sewer utility proposed rates. The other slide is the sewer utility rates.
I'll make a comment. I think these information sheets are really great. And I love that on the bottom of, it looks like the water and sewer utilities and the stormwater utility, you write that we explain why. So a rate increase is necessary to keep pace with inflation, maintain service levels, and make necessary infrastructure. So, and that it's the first rate increase since 2019. I think that if I'm a user, that's why I'm like, why are they raising our rates? And this is why, so
Thank you for that feedback. I will
Yeah.
accept that on behalf of our fantastic communications team and Zach Davis-Price.
It's really cool. I can tell
So,
someone
yeah,
worked
he
hard on
worked
it.
very hard on these and
Yeah.
kind of a new look and feel for our communications, so I appreciate it.
Very easy to understand.
Yeah. Very clearly laid out.
Okay. Stormwater utility rates. So we recently completed our first stormwater comprehensive study. It was a significant effort and quite an achievement. We'll be sharing some more information with the board on that particular study soon. But as a result of the study, an 8% increase in 2026 and 2027 was modeled and recommended to support our current level of service. That is an 8% as proposed for our base rate. That does not, there is no increase in our capital rate being proposed. So the actual effective rate for ratepayers will be a little bit less than 8%. Again, last adjusted in 2019. These are also monthly modest increases when you look at them on an annual basis, as demonstrated in the table there. The comprehensive study, just as a note in future thinking, provided additional recommendations that we will be analyzing at a staff level over the next few months. But one of those recommendations was to look at our review of our current rate structure, which to align more with industry best practices. So we will be bringing an RFP to the board in the next few months for a rate study. So we will analyze the actual structure of our rates and maybe propose some adjustments to that in future years. Outreach on this will be, again, the website, the flyer that you see, and we'll be including this. We have a stormwater splash newsletter that goes out in October to all ratepayers for stormwater utility. Questions on that? Okay. Solid waste utility rates. So this is significant. When you talk about what we have at the bottom of our sheet, we have not had adjustments to solid waste utility rates since 2012. 2012. There's a few reasons behind that, but since then the CPI has increased 40%. I will just sort of again contextualize that the solid waste facilities that we operate are the only solid waste disposal facilities in the county. So we provide that essential service on behalf of all of Thurston County. So they're very important. The table that you see before you is the representative of the most common rate adjustments that you see for most of the customers. There are lots of rate adjustments that are included in this proposal. Every item that we receive at the moderate risk waste facility, the Hazo House, has an adjustment associated with it. So just at the 13.5% is representative of all the categories. Individual rates may be a little bit higher or lower depending on the rate itself. I do need to note that there has been a correction on our rate sheet. On the website, it is correct. The organics minimum charge for 2027 is actually $19 proposed, not $18. So we've updated our rate sheet. We've updated that on the website. So I mentioned the last increase was in 2012. We intentionally postponed reviewing our rates during our last contract negotiation which ended up being with Republic Services for our maintenance operations, transport, and disposal. We wanted to complete those negotiations and assess the impacts of the new contract. That is done. We then subsequently completed a rate study. The rate study modeled what was needed to support our current level of service, but also those capital facilities that we've been talking about, like the waste and recovery reconfiguration and the South County transfer station. So what we need to be able to set aside through rates to provide for those capital needs to address our growth in our county. Again, I know it's always about what our customer's going to see. For a garbage minimum, which accounts for about 51% of the customers who visit our site, it's going to be a $3 increase to them per visit at the Waste and Recovery Center. We have, Jeff and his team have done a lot of outreach with LeMay and the City of Olympia because this obviously affects them, and you know that always gets passed down, rate increases gets passed down. But in conversations with LeMay and City of Olympia, who understand the reasoning behind this, they've given some estimates that this will, like for LeMay has provided a $1.30 a month customer increase for a 65-gallon trash bin. So I do want to point out the organics piece of this. So if you'll notice, the organics tip fee is currently $45 a ton. We are proposing that it be raised to $75 a ton in 2026 and $90 a ton in 2027. We get that that's significant, but I'm going to start with, we paid $45 in 2012. The industry has changed quite a bit since then. For our processing of that, the amount that we are contractually paying for that organics to be processed is approximately $77 per ton. So this is bringing us up in alignment to cover. We've been subsidizing that rate for many, many years. It is best practices to have that rate be lower than the garbage rate. As you can see, that is the case, $75 versus $136 for garbage, because we do want to incentivize people to do that separation and, you know, separate their organics out and dispose of them in that way. But it is still bringing us up in alignment. And I can share some comparables I'll just show a slide very quickly. I'm going to go to the end here. That maybe make you feel better. So this is a comparable slide for the areas and like jurisdictions. And so you can see we're at the present, we're second from the bottom in the present there, $119 with our garbage rate, $45 with our organics rate, the gray bar at the bottom. You can see how much lower that, oh yes.
Who's the one that's way out in front?
King County.
King County?
Just wanted you to say it.
Way to set me up. So you can see, even as we raise it to $75, we're still going to be the least expensive comparatively. And then the next increment of $90, you know, you can see even Mason County, Lewis County are slightly higher than that. So just wanted to give you that perspective, because that seems like $30 a ton seems like a significant amount.
That's a great visual, Karen. Thank you for showing the comparables.
Thank you. Thank you to our consultant for that. Oh, gathering that. So, okay. Any last questions on this before I flip back? Okay. So these rates have been been presented to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee about 3 different times, and they did take a vote in April to recommend these rates to the board for approval. In terms of outreach, these again are up on the website. We'll be putting this on social media. We'll be posting information and signs at the facilities, so visitors who are going to our facilities will be aware of them. We include these in our billing inserts for those customers who have accounts with us. We will be including, in coordination with public health, in the Healthy Homes newsletter that will go out, and that will really reach those Hazo House customers. And then I've talked a little bit about the team's outreach with LeMay and City of Olympia at this point. So I'll pause and see if any questions on our solid waste proposed rates. Fascinating stuff, I know, right, for everyone? Okay, last but not least, our noxious weeds assessment. So our proposed assessment is 25% for 2026 with no adjustment in 2027. That rate sounds large, but when you look at it on its actual annual increase basis, you can see that's not a large number. It makes more sense from a cost effectiveness and efficiency standpoint to do a higher percentage periodically rather than smaller incremental changes along the way. The adjustment itself was developed and recommended by the Noxious Weeds Control Board. There's a very specific process laid out in statute for rate adjustments for the noxious weed assessment. There was a public hearing held on June 23rd, and that resulted in 0 comments. And in terms of outreach to the community on this, 4 of the 5 members of the board Noxious Weed Board themselves are representative of the ag community, and they had been doing outreach as a part of their deliberation in this process, which I understood took place over the course of a year or more. I'll ask for questions on that. I guess I also should have mentioned last adjusted in 2016. All right. So next steps, we've got the fee adjustments posted on the web pages. I've talked a little bit about the individual outreach that we'll be doing for each of the different programs and utilities to make sure we're reaching our stakeholders correctly. We are incorporating these proposed increases and adjustments into the budget development process that will be brought to the board. There will be a public hearing scheduled in December and will be part of your deliberations over the next few months. And then the last one is specifically for the solid waste utility rates. We do have a filing requirement. I believe it's 75 days in advance of the rates being implemented to file with Utility and Transportation Commission. Excuse me. All right. And with that, I'll take a breath, see if anybody has any questions, comments.
How does, I'm wondering in terms of the solid waste, how does it, the rates, how does that play in part with kind of the South County project, right? Like, are we doing this now and then there's going to be another model later on once that's, or are we going to be following? How does it?
Well, oh, yes, good question. I mean, I will say we have a 5-year, I believe it's a 5 or 6 year modeled, 5-year modeled rate increase plan. So this is just the first 2 years of the rate increase plan that was modeled. So it's, likely that in the 28-29 budget development process, we would be bringing back an additional rate increase for the solid waste utilities. We will not be waiting, 15 years in the future to bring forward rate increases. We'll be trying and doing and modeling that on a 5-year basis. This is to help support our capital program, certainly. I have looked at the 10-year plans for the solid waste utility, and even with these rate increases, we still will likely have to seek some bridge funding if we move forward with the solid waste, if we move forward with both the work reconfiguration and the South County transfer station. But still, we want to keep in mind, we want to complete that work reconfiguration first, because I think that's going to help us, as we've talked about, assess what our future needs are in the South County and size that accurately, and would have a better budget estimate of what those facility needs are.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks for all the work that went into this, and the approach you're taking. Not keeping up with inflation will create a situation where we have to subsidize, and for enterprise fund, that's basically a government no-no. So doing this in a timely
Can you
manner.
explain that would be taking money out of the general fund to pay for those utilities?
Right, you're taking money out of the general fund that's used for general purposes and moving it to really what should be paid for as a fee for service. And it also shortchanges your ability to update infrastructure and develop the network that's needed to keep up with a growing Thurston County. So the work that you took, I'm sure this was a while ago, to bring before the commissioner's approval to get consultants on board and start the very tedious process of going through all of this data and working with the advisory boards. Thank you so much. This is the tip of the iceberg that represents quite a lot of commitment and work. And we're seeing that continue to come out of the culture of public works. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome.
Good job, guys.
Next up is 2025 Periodic Comprehensive Plan Review, Capital Facilities, Utilities, Transportation.
Good morning, Ashley. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ashley Rye, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, joined here by Derek Day, our Community Planning Manager for the third installment out of 7 of the county's comprehensive plan update. So thank you for having us back. And today we're going to focus on our capital facilities, utilities, and transportation segments of the comprehensive plan. These are addressed across 3 separate chapters, and they are all required under the Growth Management Act. So start off, as we have with our other presentations, of upcoming trends that we'll see here in the next 20 years. What we found as we were doing this work, and we actually had a consultant on board to do it, Aaron Pierce, and we worked closely with Public Works and Thurston Regional Planning Council to get this data. So, not surprisingly, in and out commuters are going to increase in the next 20 years. We're also probably going to see construction and building costs increase, both for the private sector as well as the public sector. And since we're talking about capital facilities, that's important information to have. We are going to have to balance the maintenance of our existing facilities, as you well know, with the cost of new facilities for an expanded population and an expanded workforce to serve that population. We also, the comp plan addresses the need for building climate resiliency into our plans for capital facilities and infrastructure. And so we've been developing a local climate planning model in CPED to support that work for Public Works and Central Services. And then community priorities that you'll see reflected in these chapters will be to maintain and ensure adequate infrastructure, reduce the vehicle miles traveled over the next 20 years, as well as improving safety in rural areas. One of the new components of the transportation chapter is a level of service for multimodal travel. And what does that look like in a rural area versus an urban area? Next slide.
It's a great infographic. Let's pass along to your team, who's, I believe you developed that in-house. Well done. Great quality work.
So as I mentioned, these are all mandatory requirements under the Washington State Growth Management Act. And really the goal behind developing a capital facilities chapter is to coordinate in one place all the other master planning that goes on for capital facilities. So you just heard from Public Works, they have master plans for solid waste, they have master plans for transportation. Like the capital facilities chapter of our comprehensive plan is really just kind of the clearinghouse that sort of points off to all of this other great work that the county is doing. So because of that, it's very high level. It's not a budget document. You're not going to see the level of detail that you're going to see in all of these, 400-page master plan documents. What it does help the board do is set priorities and project schedules as they think about the growth that's going to happen over the next 20 years, and how they want to fund all those various projects moving forward. So just some highlights of what the state does require in these in this higher level document. So it will include an inventory of our existing facilities, kind of a long list. It also forecasts demand and estimates need. So the need estimates over the next, 2 to 4 years, they're going to be more exact. When you're thinking about looking out 20 years, they get a little fuzzier. But still making sure that they're in there and that we're thinking about them as our population grows. It also includes long-term plans to bring our facilities into compliance if we see that there's going to be this disconnect between the level of service we want to provide to the community and what we think we already have in the works. And you'll also see a lot of projects listed that the county doesn't necessarily take responsibility for. But if this is sort of this one-stop shop for a reflection of all the master plan that goes on, we've got Puget Sound energy projects listed in there, school district projects listed in there. And it's really just as a reference. It's not necessarily that that you'll be deciding exactly what those projects are, but we did coordinate with all of those entities to make sure their projects are listed.
So are we gonna hear on that score, when you say inventory of air, water, ground temperature, the port's got a master plan for its airport, and does that have to be in ours? And then we're gonna hear people won't understand where that debates being had and we're gonna get blowback from whatever the port's doing, just as an example.
It's usually a reference out rather than taking ownership of it. So references to, yes, there's a port that operates in the county and here are things that they're working on. But this should not be the location that people are showing up at and providing feedback on the airport master plan that is under the port's authority.
There'll be some reference to it though.
I don't know how specific the reference is to the port. I know the Planning Commission has talked about references to port projects, but it's really just sort of a pointing out rather than a more inclusive.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head and I can't recall.
Okay,
Yeah, we can follow up on that.
just curious.
But it's not as if that report's gonna be in our report.
No, there's, we have appendices, with the comprehensive plan that really do just list out all of the other planning documents that exist sort of in our regional planning world. And so I know that some of the port documents are listed there and they're really just with links. It's like, hey, this should just be a place that the community can go to as a reference versus, you know, something that the county would be making any decisions on.
Cause I remember, didn't we do this chapter since I've been here, to when we were catching up?
Mm-hmm.
And there was appendix and there was school districts, and I think it was with respect to capital facilities, where we were actually pulling in
We pull in a
other
certain,
organizations' plans, just as a reference, but it was really in there.
there are references to plans as they relate to growth. So if it's called out in the Growth Management Act that we should be citing it because it has a tie-in with population growth, that's the extent to which it would be referenced. So in terms of the community feedback we've received, these have been some of our lightest chapters, which is why we're bundling 3 and bringing them to you versus reserving time to dive deep into each one. So very little feedback. I would say the feedback that we received is really tied more into the feedback that we've heard around climate. So we'll just highlight a few of those and then we can go into more depth when we get to our climate work session. As I mentioned, we heard a lot from the community about reducing vehicle miles traveled to support greenhouse gas reduction. We heard about supporting pedestrian safety in rural areas, especially as we start thinking about providing more opportunities for walking and biking or using transit in rural areas. We do have one rural transit line that connects our South County communities, and so figuring out ways to better support that and the facilities around that. And then although this doesn't fall directly under the county in terms of administration, we did hear a lot about finding ways to make energy more affordable to low-income homes. So to the extent that we could partner with other organizations or apply for grants to incentivize that, it was something that we heard a lot about from the community. In addition, since these are chapters that have a lot of touch points with outside agencies, we have heard from WashDOT and had a really great meeting with them to talk about any concerns they had in relationship to the growth that we might see in Grand Mound and impacts on state-owned transportation facilities. And so you'll hear more about that when we get into our environmental impact statement, but we'll definitely have references to WashDOT facilities. And then we heard from Puget Sound Energy. They wanted to make sure that we had the latest data and narratives regarding their upcoming projects, because they're also doing a lot in our communities as they try to meet their state goals.
In your meeting with WashDOT, did they mention or thank the county for the work that the county did for the state project?
I don't think that was the nature of the conversation.
We can ask about that next time.
Are we waiting for
Thank yous go up, not down.
It's up to these guys. Do you want to take a
Going to the end or getting questions?
Go ahead, I'd ask
Yeah,
a
we
question.
can.
Oh, I'm wondering for the key things for public comment, right? And I'm wondering how public comment was integrated into this piece of the comp plan. And just, we've heard some public comment about that, but I think it's another area of and so I'm just wondering for this piece, how has it, as we've received it, right? How has these ones elevated? Has it just been by organization or how has that worked?
So I would say the most of the feedback that we got actually probably cross-cuts with some of the climate input that we got. So that was a really, really detailed process that we went through. So some of that will be reflected in, for example, some of the transportation. I'm not sure on how to answer the kind of organizational question.
Well, yeah, right, like, I'm asking like governmental agencies, right, like PSC or, businesses like PSC, since they're private, you know, they've submitted comment, you've said, right, and right, so like those kind of get elevated up a little bit more is.
Their information, because it really gets to the substantive.
Okay.
The substance of the chapters were integrated into the draft that the Planning Commission reviewed. So those were meetings that we had before we even got to the Planning Commission review and the public hearing. Whereas the WashDOT meeting was a meeting post-public hearing, and so we talked about having the environmental impact statement, which is really what their concerns are, is the state is exempting more and more projects from the State Environmental Policy Act. And so we're trying to meet these new state goals, but WashDOT wants to make sure that their concerns are addressed in other places, so.
Yeah, and they actually offered some really helpful feedback on how, like what kind of pre-assessment you need to do to actually exempt projects from SEPA for the transportation impact.
Okay, thank you.
They threw us a bone.
How do you, I don't know if it's even possible, like, it seems like there should be some kind of weighted system for public comment. Like with the comp plan, it's so like, it's kind of esoteric to the, you know, general person. They don't realize how important and like big it is. But then there's certain groups that do understand that. And, you know, like you've got a club XYZ and they're like, hey, 15 members, let's all provide public comment to this thing. And then all of a sudden there's a tremendous amount of weight given to that thing because this club understands how to advocate for that thing. And then it becomes that club's vision or, you know, desires becomes this embedded opinion of the entire public. Like, how do you suss that out? Because like when I see the public outreach efforts, but then and I know the magnitude of this thing, and like how do you do that? Like to where do you understand what I'm saying?
And I think for us, it's about transparency, so providing you with the public comments, and we have even collected this with the comprehensive planning outreach effort, where those public comments are coming from, so you'll even have like
I saw the public comment dashboard.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of input.
Spatial analysis of even like, are you hearing from your rural communities? Are you hearing just from one small area of the county? So I think there's digging into that data. And there's also, reviewing the public comments and seeing, is it the same 5 people who are commenting? Are you seeing a broad variety of people commenting? And so we've broken that out by chapter. And so that you can dig into some of that.
I started to, and there's a lot, so like if anybody hasn't yet, on the Thurston 2045 website, you have down at the bottom, like your most recent public comments, and then there's like a kind of a carousel of comments that come in, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and that shift for us, shifting to SurveyMonkey was huge, because as soon as someone submits their comment, they'll see it posted, so there's no following up to verify whether it was received or not. And also, every comment is available to the public and the commissioners, so full transparency on here's what we're seeing. And that's not something we had before. We used to do it all in PDFs, and we'd only update it, once a week or once every 2 weeks, because it was pretty labor intensive.
How do you sift through those, and how do you vet those, and what weight do those carry on your decision making?
So we're not making the decisions. What we've done with the Planning Commission is we have been providing the updated comments for every meeting. So they're getting them in these smaller bite-sized chunks. So if you're looking at it right now, it's like, oh boy, there's like,
I tried.
Maybe up to 500 or 600.
Yeah, I tried.
For the Planning Commission, they have been like, if they were talking about housing, we were taking all the comments we had for housing, and then just delivering those. Or, you know, for that next meeting that they were having, we were just taking the comments received in the last 2 weeks that they hadn't already seen. So to that extent, we've really tried to provide the planning commission with the best information possible, because they're making a decision at this point in the process, and a recommendation, not a final decision, but a recommendation to you all. And to the extent that, you know, when we have our plan is when we are packaging up the draft comp plan for you all to review, that we do also provide a summary of those public comments. You're not having to sift through 500, but that you'll be given a higher level summary. And if there's feedback on how best to get that information to the board, definitely give that feedback to Leonard and Josh, because we're open to putting together, you know, packets of info that are going to make your decision as easy as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've been trying to hit on this too. Where are we leading the way as a county? And so these chapters in particular, they're going to be implemented on an ongoing basis. I want to highlight efforts by Public Works to continue to explore trail investments and opportunities for connectivity. I think there was a ribbon cutting, was it last week, for Cape Billmore? And really looking forward to the extension of that trail. We are looking for innovative opportunities for water conservation. We actually found out we are going to get an extension to the Integrated Water Resources Grant, so we'll be able to continue work on that into the new state biennium. And so through that process, looking for creative ways to work with our partners around water conservation. And Lot had a great presentation last week that preceded ours. Planning for climate resiliency is a joint effort, both internally, working with our partners in Public Works, environmental health, and then externally as we think about infrastructure. And we've also been before you talking about innovative or new opportunities for rural sewer and water infrastructure. So really trying to look at the changes to loss systems that are making them more affordable and more modular, to see how they can better serve our rural communities and our rural residential developments, because it is way more advantageous from an environmental perspective to have our rural residential developments using community wastewater systems, community water systems versus individual wells and septics. So looking at ways to incentivize that. And then in terms of policy questions, we don't really have any big ones, but I do want to highlight that there has been quite a bit of discussion around how the county completes the capital improvements program, and we put a lot of effort into looking at how other counties approach their capital improvements program, Appendix G of the comp plan, and also hearing from our planning commission and the public about the review process that we had in place for that. We are currently on an annual review process for our capital improvements program, and I'm using the planning commission's language here. They felt like a rubber stamp on it. There wasn't enough time to prepare all the required documentation and go through a meaningful review process where the planning commission, where they're looking at sort of population growth, the comp plan, and being able to give the board any kind of feedback in that approval. So we are looking to shift it to a 2-year process, which both lessens the level of resources that staff have to put in, as well as gives the public and the planning commission and the board a more meaningful review process for that. And so far we've heard general support from the planning commission, and that'll be coming as part of the packages. Plan is that change.
The 2 times that I remember them not feeling like they had enough time, there were things that came up. Like, I don't really understand how the 1 year to 2 year cycle is going to solve that problem. Something came up that was like an opportunity on a capital facility issue, and the board had to make a decision, and then the planning commission, at least one time I can remember, weren't happy that they didn't have more time to review, but there wasn't time for, there wouldn't have been, the 2 year cycle not going to change that. It was an opportunity that came up and we had to make a decision.
What we're working on is, I think, of some clarity around what actually needs to be included in that. There's the consideration for growth versus the county's organizational need to buy buildings and develop buildings, et cetera.
That's my question. I don't understand why the planning commission, do they have purview over our capital facilities planning? In what way? Is that something that we opt into? What does that actually mean?
So under the growth, oh, go ahead.
I've asked the same question because I think what we're looking at is the function of the planning commission for the county's, small C county, not an organization, but the county's growth versus us organizationally. And I'll let Ashley speak to some, because we asked the questions, and Josh, even before I got here, was asking questions of our legal team to figure out.
I can understand when it comes to like wastewater treatment plants and how that intersects with growth and things like that, but you know, what the courthouse looks like or where the sheriff's building, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, and I think we had a really positive discussion with the planning commission, trying to, like, we explained what's required under the Growth Management Act. This is not a budget document, and I think it's been treated as a budget document in the past. And so what we have talked to the planning commission about is that this is a community resource. This should be a reference document that points off to what Public Works is doing for their, sorry, it's still under your purview, Jennifer.
Still in my heart too.
What Public Works has planned, and creating a more robust web portal to get information about, you know, all the great things that the county is doing on the capital facilities front. Similarly, Central Service is creating a web portal, and that's where details live, that's where updates live, and that the CIP is really just that community resource that can point people to these things that are underway, but it's not where the details live. And for the planning commission.
So they need to say the county will meet the needs of a growing county.
Yep, and it can be very high level, and that's what we saw when we looked at other jurisdictions. I mean, I think was it Welcome or Kitsap County, their capital improvements program, their appendix was less than 30 pages. And it was very high level, just like, yes, we know we're gonna grow by this much. We know we're gonna have to increase our capacity, you know, on these fronts. And it's like placeholders to communicate to the community that, yeah, this is on our radar. Yeah, we're aware that we're gonna need to grow in our operations or in our facilities. But beyond that, there should be flexibility built in terms of how we meet those needs. It's just
the last 2 years have laid out several, obvious reasons why it should be as you're describing, I would think.
And I think that is really the intent when you read the guidance on capital facilities planning, MRSC's guidance, best practices for how to, you know, build the capital facilities plan chapter, as well as the appendix that has, you know, this additional information.
I think a while back, as this direction was set years and years ago, the organization took the approach and kind of merged two processes. As an organization, you want to have a capital facilities master plan, a list of all your facilities, how they need to be upgraded, where they're at, what growth you need to experience. That's more of an organizational component. But trying to put that together with a process that Ashley's describing creates confusion, and that's what I understand was expressed by some of the planning commissioners. If we're supposed to review this, then what type of information do we need? And so I really appreciate the planning commissioners and Ashley and Derek for having those conversations to come up with a different approach that gets us what we need to accomplish in that, but also the flexibility to, like you said, have an overview of here's all our facilities, here's our space needs from now to 2050. But then we have to go after opportunities as they avail themselves, and sometimes things may not happen as we think, and sometimes opportunity can develop quite quickly, as in this recent situation.
But like some of to me, the disconnect was the planning commission having that perspective that you just described of where what lens they should be applying to the thing before them. You know, like the one I'm remembering is not the one the sheriff's building, it was the auditor's building. It's like, okay, we're renting space. Now we have an opportunity to purchase the space. You know, how we budget for that and whether we should own or like that doesn't have anything to do with growth and capacity. Like The planning commission didn't need to worry about any of that. But they felt like,
weighed in on that?
yeah, they said we shouldn't purchase it. And they said,
But
That's silly.
And then they had Robin go in there and provide like this full financial,
like they felt they needed to assess
The
all
whole
the
planning
financial
commissions do.
components and all that stuff. And I don't think from what Ashley's saying, that's what their task should have been.
Yeah.
no, but I don't know that it's the planning commission's fault. I think the
Yeah.
way,
Well, they don't know.
right, it's the way in which we converged these two different functions and presented something to them where it created the environment where they believe they were supposed to be weighing in on that. So what Ashley has been working on is, and there's been some discussion even with the central services team as well, is what's the right way to back it out and peel it apart so that what they have purview over is accomplished. But then organizationally, that's really a commissioner's purview as
They
to,
can weigh in on whatever we ask them to, right? You can move anything to that committee, but then you're right, like, once you give it to them, that
Well-
becomes part of their work.
and I think there's an interpretation of by law what has to go before them. And it was just, I would say it's more of an evolutionary process of, well, if this has to go, let's package this up and send it off. And decisions that hardworking, good-meaning staff did in times past, that then all of a sudden, as new people look at it, it goes, well, if we're supposed to look at this, then we don't just want to be a rubber stamp. We want to look at this, and this. And they've been very open, as I understand from Ashley, to say, well, if we shouldn't look at it, then what should we be looking at? And that's what we're working on right now, fulfilling the requirements of Washington. It's Washington Constitution, or it's built into RCW, right?
Both, so we've tied it with both our Thurston County Code and RCW.
Because my first perspective was coming from where I came from. This isn't required, pull it out. It's like, well, there's different laws here in the city of Washington, and so we
As
have
far
to-
as a chapter in the comp plan, you're saying?
Yes, like this, because from where I came from, there was a master facilities plan that came before the governing body, the board. And then there was the growth planning that went to the planning commission that ultimately, but those are two very separate things. So there's a little bit of a nuance of what we're doing here, but I think.
But shouldn't we have there should be the chapter in the comp plan that says, thou shalt provide facilities for a growing county, then we would have a master facility plan or
Yes.
something to that effect in addition to that, right?
What
And
Ashley's
they would
saying-
speak to each other.
What Ashley's saying is, we have to do this, but best practice is that we've been doing more than other counties.
Yes.
And so we're looking to do less to meet the requirements and set the expectations appropriate for the planning commission.
And then because we touched on it, in the spirit of what full cost recovery and full cost of ownership for our county, that's where a facilities master plan comes into place. So that then when we go to central services and we can say, where are our buildings at? And we should be doing this annually. What's the deferred maintenance? What do we need to be looking at? We can quickly have an idea of what that looks like. Because that's part of running this organization in this large county, is understanding that we have a wonderful building at the Tilly campus. I really think the Public Works building is amazing. To keep it amazing, we need to continue to invest in it. And we need to bring that forward annually so we understand what do those investments look like, and that we are drawing the internal rates from different customers for that overhead so that we can fully support our facilities going forward. That's the only way that we would be able to be sustainable as a county.
But decoupling those is where we are right now. It's a good process. Appreciate the work.
And it's taken, I would say, months for them to work this through. So I really appreciate the hard work so we don't get ourselves in a similar Groundhog's Day conversation.
It's funny how sometimes those like simple things
Yeah.
are sensitive.
Yeah, that's the real building of infrastructure that we're working on with the two assistant county managers and the directors, is charting new courses. This didn't work this time because it did pop up again with the sheriff's building, and it caused some concern. And it was then, well, this happened before. So I really appreciate all the staff that have been working hard to understand this so that we can have a better approach in talking it through so we don't have to do this again.
And just to highlight the kind of feedback that you might get from the planning commission in future years, a good example that we've used with them in terms of the kind of feedback that would be helpful is they have heard a lot in Grand Mound about having an active recreation space through their work on the comp plan. Now, they don't necessarily get to decide whether Public Works is gonna be able to get that into their work plan. But that's an area where it's like, this is a growing community. You've heard a lot from them as the UGA has expanded, as we've looked at rezones. That's feedback that they might wanna deliver to the board.
So that's a good example of something that would be in their capital facilities plan is outdoor recreation space, this region of the county.
Yeah, that they might say like, hey, what we see missing from this CIP is a plan for an active recreation space in Grand Mound. And highlight that for the board so that you can decide how you want to expend resources and provide whatever direction to whatever department, you would need to do that. So that's the guidance we've been giving them is like, you hear a lot of stuff on the land use growth side. Is it matching what you're seeing at that high level, and have it be more focused on, project schedule, like very general project schedules or resource allocation.
And actually, I'm glad we're having these conversations and these bite-sized pieces because it allows us to really keep things in focus. So again, just.
Still big bites.
They are.
It's hard to break it down, but you're doing a great job.
Yeah, so thank you to you and Derek, in addition to everything you have going on, to initiate this kind of outreach and engagement with the board. Really appreciate it.
And that's all we have for today. I'm back with natural resources next. I did want to highlight for folks that might be watching, we did get a slight change in dates because I'm going to be out of town on September 3rd. So we are going to move up climate to August 27th. So future presentations will have that reflected, but just so you're aware. We get to talk about climate sooner rather than later. Thanks.
Okay, commissioner items, last piece of this morning's work session, anything needs to be raised by the board?
I'll be online for the next one and
Okay,
have to drop off at 2 because I have Lewis Mason.
Perfect, thank you, Commissioner Grant. I don't think it'll be super long this afternoon, Commissioner Klaus.
The finance committee item that's on this afternoon's agenda, I know we pushed it a week. I'd like to push it again to next week since Commissioner Grant won't be available to be here in person later.
Fine with me.
When it comes up, we just talk about it or
We'll come up, we'll just table it.
Okay.
Table it for next week.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.